I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. Hey there, it's me, Josh from Clear and Loud. You know, this era of my life is all about the freedom found in being able to grow, tell new stories, and create new things. And that's exactly what I do through my company, Clear and Loud. Yes, it's not just a podcast. We are a boutique creative agency that helps entrepreneurs, authors, and big thinkers launch their world-changing ideas into reality. So whether it's crafting a website that connects with your audience, developing a podcast that amplifies your voice, or implementing systems that streamline your business, we've got the expertise to make it happen. We don't just tackle projects. We like to say we ignite momentum. We're all about big launch energy. So we work alongside you to clarify your strategy, capture attention with compelling storytelling, and supercharge your growth with the right tools and technology. So whether you're a company that needs a little added firepower or a solopreneur who doesn't want the hassle of managing a bunch of freelancers, if you're ready to take the next big step and to turn your vision into an unforgettable reality, reach out to us at Clear and Loud. Let's hop on a free strategy call and get that big launch energy flowing. Go to www.clearandloud.com. You've got a story to tell, and we'll help the world hear it. Hey, friends. Welcome back to the Clear and Loud podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I am excited about today's conversation with Lisa McGuire. Lisa is a fractional CMO and reinvention strategist who helps individuals and businesses discover their true selves and align their purpose with their paycheck. I love that phrase, align your purpose with your paycheck. What do you do when those things are out of alignment? When what you do for a living doesn't really tap into who you really are, what you really love? I mean, we all have to, do jobs at times, or parts of our jobs are not always that much fun. But what if there's a real mismatch? How do you change? How do you reinvent yourself? Something that Lisa talks about is how too often we settle for a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And I think that's a very profound way of putting it. You might be in a familiar hell right now in your life when it comes to your work or just the things that you're doing, and you don't know how to break out of that. Maybe you don't have the motivation to break out, and that's the thing that scares you the most. I think you're really going to benefit from this conversation. Lisa is just a very wise woman. She's a few years older than me. I love having friends in different seasons of life, and she just has such a warmth and wisdom and way of thinking about the human experience and how who we are inside factors into the work we do and how we show up in the world. So she's got a background in corporate and in education. Lisa now focuses on helping others build fulfilling careers that reflect their unique gifts and talent. She's passionate about identity, human design, and navigating the challenges of transitioning from the corporate world to entrepreneurship. So whatever your story might be when it comes to reinvention or getting into better alignment, I hope you'll listen and I hope you'll benefit. Here's Lisa McGuire. Lisa McGuire, welcome to Clear and Loud.
Oh, Josh, I have been waiting for this interview. Thank you so much.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this. I love every time we have the chance to talk. I always learn something from the way that you run your business. We're fellow story brand guides, and so we have
Yes.
a wonderful shared history. I'm wondering if you could just kind of at the top, share what you do professionally and what the focus of your work is.
Yes, I really do 2 different things. I'm a fractional CMO, that's Chief Marketing Officer, and I am a reinvention strategist, and I'll throw in another, a culture enthusiast. So what
Ooh.
what all is all of that? Many service providers don't understand how they differ from others in the industry.
Mm.
So I help them know who they are, how to show up, and what to say when they do.
Oh, that's so good. Do you have a favorite of those 3 kind of roles that you would choose if you had the opportunity?
Well, I've been working in the messaging space for so long, Josh. That is just a part of who I am. So
Yeah.
to me, that is just a given. But the part that I really love is the helping people discover who they are, because who they really are is not who they think they are. So that is
Oh
a
my
big
gosh.
ha ha
There's a lot to
and
unpack there. I love that.
just so fun.
Well, you use a phrase on your website that I find so compelling. You talk about how people need to align their purpose with their paycheck.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I think from a very young age, I don't know why, I've always been a little bit different than everyone else, but we are all different than everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Everybody tells us to be who you are, but oh, not that way, right?
Right.
Not that way.
Yeah.
So I've always, since I was 10 years old, have been on this pursuit of what does purpose mean?
Mm.
And to me, what I came to realize is I know we all are given unique talents and gifts.
Yeah.
And when we put those to work in the world, that will help us align with our purpose. So when we look at the fact that one of the things we're created to do is we're created to do work.
Yeah.
And so if we can use our gifts and talents to put that purpose in the world, why not find a way to align that in a place where we are compensated for it?
Mm. I've got so many things I want to talk to you about, um, because I feel like this is touching on, I guess I want to say, like, generational divides in a way.
Mhm,
I had 2 conversations in the last week. One was with someone who was older, who was talking about how hard it is to find that synergy where what you do professionally is actually who you are as a person, and you actually love what you do.
mhm,
And that's what you're all about, which I think is great. And it made me realize that, especially like prior generations, that was not necessarily
mhm,
emphasized. It was like mom and dad said, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer. You went and did that, or you got a job at the factory and you just stayed in that job forever. So there's like this generation that needs this message. Hey, you know what? You can actually love your work. It can have purpose. It can have
mhm,
meaning. But then I had another conversation with someone who teaches at a university in the UK, and this person was saying teaching this generation is so difficult. This Gen Z or whatever you want to call it, and basically saying they are so focused on things need to fit my preferences,
mhm,
and I've got social anxiety, so you can't ask me to share in class, like this long list of what the teacher is not allowed to tell them to do. And I'm not wanting to say this is true of all Gen Z people, but it almost felt like, whoa, this is a generation that feels like they're taking this message of just do the thing that aligns with your purpose and your sense
mhm.
of meaning and so on, so far in the other direction that you almost want to say, hey, can I give you a little boomer energy where you just need to do your job whether or not you're happy? So I'm just curious, like, what do you see when it comes
Oh,
to the people you work with, where is it possible to take this message too far, or how
so
would you address that?
I I love this question because there does need to be a balance, right? Like we need to look at the world that we live in. But let me start with the older conversation with the
Yeah.
older person that you had. My mother today is 91, all right? So we still have this conversation where she says to me, "You work too much." Now, to me, I don't work. I do what I love
Oh,
because it is not work. It is not work. And so we've agreed to have this definition that her definition of work is what I get paid to do, right?
mm,
That's how we've defined it. And for that generation, and most of the people in my generation, Josh, work is a four-letter word in,
yeah,
in the negative sense,
yeah,
right? It is something that you trade your time for dollars, and you do not dare give your employer one bit more because they're taking advantage of you then.
yeah,
You are not supposed to like your work. Like, work is supposed to be bad, and then you get to have the weekend. Or what really just drove me crazy is when you retire, you get to do what you love, right?
right,
And what if you don't make it that long?
yeah.
Right?
Or you're just kind
What
of
if
like life doesn't start until the weekend or life
no.
doesn't start until retirement.
Right. Or what if you're not healthy enough to do what you love, and what you love at that point is not exciting anymore? So I think there needs to be a wake up call, and I'm seeing that with a lot of people in my generation. It's like,
Mm,
"Wait, what? I can do something fun." I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. I said, "What did you love to do when you were a child?" And he talked about how he really loved to write. And I said, "So, is there something you could do, whether it's using your writing skills, or if you're a good problem solver, maybe you work in the writing industry? Like, there has to be an ability to merge some of your interest with
mm,
your skills, right?"
right.
So I think that's a conversation, and a lot of conversations I'm having with people in my generation and just a little bit younger that are saying, "Oh, this is great. Like, I get to choose,"
Right.
because the world tells us, again, this is the path to success. This is the way to your six-figure salary, your seven or eight-figure business. This is how you
Yeah.
have to do it. And when you go down that path, many people get to their late 40s, 50s, even 60s and say, "Well, this is it, right? This is
This
it."
isn't the life I wanted, or
No,
this didn't
no,
fulfill me. Yeah.
no. And the people who do achieve those 7 and 8 figure businesses, and, have their private jets, you know what? They're not happy either,
Mm,
because they feel like success painted as a dollar sign was this big promise, and they get to the end of it and they feel like this is a big lie. This is a
wow.
big lie. So,
You keep
yeah,
mentioning your generation. What generation are you, Lisa?
I am the difference between the low boomers and what's the next one?
The
The
Gen
Gen
Xers?
X? Yeah,
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 okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm on the bottom end of that top end. So I'm right on that cusp there.
I love it.
Um, I don't like to call myself a boomer. Well, let me say it this way. I don't mind being a boomer, but I'm a little disappointed in boomers, to be frank, because I think boomers have created this image that you have to do it my way or the highway. You have to pay your dues. Well, you know what? That is a very selfish, self serving way to think.
Mm,
We are one people.
yeah.
We all put our pants on the same way, right? We all have the same things, and just because we've been on this planet a little bit longer than someone else
Mm,
does not entitle us to have things, or to there's just I'm not really happy with my generation, the
interesting.
reputation of it.
Right.
Um, which is why I probably relate to people that are much younger than I am, and excited about working with people because I see their potential of what they can do. So,
Oh,
so
that's really
that
good. Well,
yeah,
how
that's
would
my
you
little
address that
PMO.
other
Yeah,
conversation with that younger,
yeah,
mindset?
yeah. So, a lot of people would think, "Oh, you're just spoiled brats. You're entitled. You think the world revolves around you." But let me propose this to you. Education, as it still exists today, the origin of it started back in the Industrial Revolution
Mm,
several hundred years ago, when the way schools were organized was for the purpose of training factory workers. Now, look at school classrooms today.
Mm,
We put them in rows. The teacher is at the front, AKA the factory line worker, and everyone sits in their seat, given the knowledge, spit it back out. If you perform well, you get a great grade.
mm,
Does it mean you learn anything? It means you can take a test, right? That's
right.
why a lot of college entrance exams, they did away with them for a while because it doesn't really measure your ability and your knowledge. It just measures, can you take that test well?
Mhm.
And a lot of people pay a lot of money to do that. So the first thing I would propose is education is not designed for the audience. Um,
Mm,
our learners have changed, people have changed. I also, having been quite a couple decades in education, have a very strong feeling that schools that exist like that were not made for very active children, which a lot of
yeah,
times they happen to be in the male gender, right? So they
yeah.
happen to identify as male. So you want to put them in a row and behind a desk all day for 8 hours,
They're
and you
not gonna they're not
no,
gonna do well. They're
no,
yeah.
no. Yeah. So that's the first part. The second part about this, design for me, education design for me, is as our generations have continued to evolve, right now the younger generation that's being born, they have a higher level of consciousness that have not been conditioned out of them yet.
Mm.
So, if you think about it, when you come into the world, and this is really just blew my socks off when's the last time I said that? I don't even know. But anyway, we were talking about boomers, right?
Yeah, I love that
Um,
phrase.
yeah, yeah. So it set my hair on fire when I learned this. Okay. So if you think about the hurdles that we have where we get in our own way, this is all based on things that happened to us before the age of 7. And many times we don't remember. Now,
Mm,
the reason why we don't remember is children from before birth, 3 months before birth until age 7, they operate, primarily with a lot of theta waves is how they are thinking, right? So the
mm,
brain waves are theta waves. These theta waves are the same frequency as what we have when immediately we fall asleep or when we are hypnotized. So, if you think about that, the images that come in, the communication comes in, the perceptions that come in. So if there is a child and they live in a very chaotic home
mm.
where there's a lot of yelling or even violence or whatever, they become conditioned and learn this is what's normal for me.
Yeah.
Now, they also learned that if I want to stay safe, I need to back up and be quiet. I need to get out of a corner. I
Mm,
must not be worthy. So, all of those stories we have, then what end up happening by the time we turn to 7, then we move into a different brainwave state. All right.
mm.
So, all of those things up to age 7, guess where that ends up? That's your ego. That is your ego. So, what we're finding now is that children that are coming into the world,
Mm,
they are a little bit more in tune with who they are, and they've not had the years and decades of the world telling them all of these things they can't be, and they're speaking up more.
yeah.
They've got conscious parenting. So, when my kids were coming up, we would say things. I know we would say things like, "Don't be a baby," or, "Oh, cry it out," or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I'm watching my grandkids and my 2-year-old grandson, when I go pick him up sometimes from preschool, his teacher will say, "We just love him so much because he tells us when he's sad." And I'm thinking, what child has that consciousness to know that?
Right. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I
So
was with a
parents are
little
raising children.
yeah, there is a different style of parenting for sure,
Yeah.
and I was with a little, a 3-year-old,
Uh-huh.
and she'd been taught this song about boundaries, like, "I have these boundaries," and, I
Yes.
was like, "This is so brilliant."
Yeah.
But that's a completely different, concept than parenting in the
Yes.
past, kind of like, oh, your so and so wants to hug you, that you got to let them hug you. You got to do all these things,
Right,
whatever. And it's
right,
like, no, I
right.
can have boundaries even as a small child. I can set my
Yeah.
boundaries and ask you to stay there. So it's interesting how those different ways of thinking and the
Mhm,
child training and all those things can have these moments of clashing where to an older
mhm,
generation that can just seem preposterous, that this young person would be
mhm,
asking for or demanding something. But I also think there's this amazing like beauty of the generations learning from each other's strengths,
mhm.
like the good and the bad, that strange
Yes.
mix that makes all of us human when we can come together and actually like try to learn and benefit from each other. I think that's so powerful.
It really is, and that's one of the reasons I'm a culture enthusiast is because right now we have 4 generations working in the marketplace, and when we realize that each generation, and I don't mean to be stereotypical at all, but each generation tends to be thought of in a certain way or operate in a certain way or
Yeah.
hold a certain type of beliefs, and if we could just take our egos and set them to the side
Mm.
and pause to get curious
Yeah.
to say, "Why do you believe that way? I never
Right.
thought of it that way." And if it doesn't fit in your filter, then rather than judging, ask, "Why do I believe that way? And is
Mm.
it really true?" Right?
That's so
Yeah,
good.
is it
That's so
really
good.
true?
So
Yeah.
is part of what you do when you talk about being a culture enthusiast, are you
Mhm,
consulting and working with organizations to help them think about the dynamic of the different people on their teams and the different generations
mhm.
and all the ways that mixes together?
Yeah, so where I come in for culture is when there is, when there's something going on in a company. So whether it's they're trying to move something forward or something stuck or they just don't know
Mm.
what to do. A lot of times, they'll try to point and blame on a particular department or project or whatever. So I bring in a tool called the Culture MRI, and what it does, it is an assessment that
Mm.
everyone in the organization takes. It takes 8 minutes, and then what happens is you get a dashboard that tells you exactly what each of your employees are thinking about. Do they feel safe? Do they feel like they're compensated well? Are they under stress? Are they inspired? Do they see innovation in the company? And what are the 3 reasons out of the 3 reasons why we find meaning at work? Which of those apply to them? And those 3 reasons are, do I love my craft, what I
Mm.
love to do?
Yeah.
Am I here because of the cause, what the company stands for? Or am I here because of community? Because
Mm.
we know when someone is at a place of work and they have a best friend there, they are less likely to leave. So
So
we
fascinating.
yeah, we get this dashboard back, but here's the difference, Josh. This is the only tool I know of that the employee engagement score is tied to a financial outcome. And so what we know is that for every percentage of increase of employee engagement, we know exactly how much it is worth to the company. We can
So they can actually
also
see it's affecting
oh,
the
yes.
bottom line. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and so before where a CFO would have said, "You wanna paint the break room blue and put in a pool table," like, or, you wanna have this big event with this band, like, where are we getting the ROI back, right?
Yeah.
And it also will tell us what is kind of under your employee's skin and
Mm.
the percentage that will likely leave within a year and what you can do to prevent that. So, it's pretty
That's
fascinating, and
powerful.
it is. I'm very excited about it because I think, business we know runs on numbers and data and what does it mean. So I think when we have a way to bring that data in, it suddenly gets people's attention. And so the reason why I am so passionate about culture is if you're working in a toxic environment, can you do work that you love?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I want to come back to the aligning your purpose and your paycheck. And I'm just wondering if you could share your own story of that
Mhm.
alignment. And I mean, I guess I imagine that people listening might be saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm kind of in that same, season of life, and
Mhm. Mhm.
Lisa's doing
Yeah.
this really cool stuff." Like, how did you get to where you are today? What was that process like?
Yes, well, I stumbled through it because there was no one to guide me through it, right, Josh? Because, it really started into, and I won't tell my whole life story here. So you're okay. We're okay, folks. I started out doing what I thought I was supposed to do. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Ohio, and I loved going to school. So what was I going to do? I was going to go become a teacher because I thought, oh, I love going to school. I'll be around it. It is really great. And I did that for a while and ended up in education, in administration, and became one of the founders of a private school within the Atlanta, Georgia community. And as I did that, I ran the admissions, marketing, communications, financial aid, international students. Give me a hat and I'll put it on, right?
Seriously, that's a lot more than just being a teacher, right?
Yes, it was.
Uh,
But I loved it because we were in a situation where we were on the cutting edge. We were bringing in children and looking, so it's going to sound familiar to a previous question. We were looking at what were their gifts and talents and what would we track them into? How could they bring that into a future career,
oh, wow,
right?
you were actually asking that question as educators.
Oh,
Wow.
yes, yes. At kindergarten, we started
Mm,
started identifying things and how to track to bring them on through because
mhm.
what we were seeing is this was a college preparatory school. We were seeing students who may, for instance, may not be math minded, right? They just aren't numbers people. They might be more language and arts, those
Right.
type of students, but their parent might have been in the financial services industry or an
Okay.
accountant or something like that. So you will go to this college and you will major and you will be an accountant because you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They'd either start and flunk out of
Yeah.
accounting 101, or if they made it through, they'd get out. And what did they go do for a job? They were working at Enterprise Car Rental, right? They were doing nothing with their degree. Um, and we just thought, this is just, it breaks my heart. College completion rates went from 4 years to 6 years. Why? Because kids were changing their major. They didn't, they weren't into what they were doing.
Yeah.
So when I left the school, I decided, okay, what is it that I really want to do? And one thing I saw within this educational institution is we had a lot of very successful, driven parents
Mm,
that were in this situation of this is what you have to do to be successful, right? Let's follow this script. And I could see their children blossoming, but then they would be squashed when a parent would say, no, you're going to do this. And I looked at why was the parent like, what was driving that parent
mm,
to do that?
mhm.
What was it that was taking that child off track of evolving into who they were supposed to be? And what it was, there is a wound within that parent
Mm.
who wanted a do over, right? Who wanted
Right.
to say, if you do it this way, you're going to be successful and I'm going to look like a good parent.
Yeah.
So I took a step back and I thought, it's not the children that have the problem. Let's go down to the root. The
Mm.
root of that is how can I change the parents? So I decided I would start my business. Why not help these parents find joy in their work by
Wow.
expressing who they are and in turn allow their kids to grow up and do the same? So I really, when I started my business, was to get to the core problem. I'm on a mission for
Mm,
people to love what they do and understand because you may be designed differently than I am, which you most likely are.
mm.
It's okay if you do something different. And if you want to go be the person that paints numbers on the curbs of your neighborhood and that brings you joy, more power to you. Now, Are they probably going to end up buying a private jet? Well, maybe they don't want to.
Yeah,
So
maybe they don't
I
want the
think
private jet. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think we have to reexamine our definition of success, and I think we have to understand that until we can love ourselves first, there is not going to be the ability to love each other, and that is exactly what's happening in the world right now.
I think you're so right, and I love how that aligning of your purpose with what you do professionally and that sense of peace that comes with not living
Mm,
somebody else's plan
yes.
is not just about improving your life. It actually improves the lives of everyone around you because you're no longer like grasping and trying to
Mm-mm.
manipulate and control and even your own children. It's like if you're the greatest gift you can give to your kids is like to live your own life
Mhm.
and find joy and fulfillment in your work so that you're not like putting on this massive burden on your children.
Yes, absolutely, and what a great role model to do that for your children, for the generations, because what you're also doing, Josh, is you're breaking down some of the generational trauma
Mm.
that exists, that lives within you. This is a really cool thing, if you don't mind me sharing
Oh,
that.
please.
Yeah, there is a new science called epigenetics, EPI genetics. And epigenetics, if you think about your epidermis is your skin, so that's above your body. So epi is above your genetics.
Hmm.
So what it is if you think about it, your grandmother that suffered some type of trauma or had a particular attitude carried that idea within her, and when she birthed your mother,
Yeah.
some of those genes came to your mother, and some of those genes now live in you.
Wow.
So there have been stories of people where they maybe just terrified of fire and they have no idea why. And
Mm.
they go back in the family history and find out there was a fire in the family. Or maybe they're terrified of heights. They have no idea why. That is carried in our genes. So when you think about that, when you intentionally
Mm.
go through the process of loving yourself and healing yourself, you're stopping that genetic curse that you're passing
Yeah.
on to other generations.
Incredible. That's
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah.
How do you use that, epigenetics and those principles in your coaching or as you work with
Mhm.
individuals? Like, what are some of the ways that that comes out in those
Yeah, so I
relationships?
I think the thing is, when I first started on this and decided that I wanted to have this big mission to do
Mm.
this, right? I decided, okay, what is it that I do really well? Well, it was messaging, right? So I
Mm.
started my business, and you and I met a couple of years after this, but I became a storybrand guide. So messaging strategist, this is what I do really well. I'm going to help people who have a business. They've got an offer, right? They want to sell a
Yeah.
product or service.
Right.
They've got a client that they want to sell it to. Well, the bridge that connects those, you and I both know it's the message, right?
Yeah.
If the message isn't clear, they're not going to find it. They're
Right.
not going to make that sale. So I was doing that and realized that I was going through the motions. Like there was more to me than that. And then
Mm.
we had this thing called a pandemic that hit.
Speaking
And
of generational trauma.
yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's gonna be for quite a while. But, if you remember, there was a very popular app called Clubhouse. I believe it still exists today, but
Yeah,
Clubhouse was a voice app that, we're all sitting in our homes in
I
quarantine.
remember it,
So,
yeah.
yeah, we pick up our phone, we can get on Clubhouse, and it was a way to talk to other people, to meet other people, to relate to other people. So I can remember it was February 2021. Okay, clear as day. I was in a Clubhouse room, which means it just what app was open on my phone. And there was someone at the front of the room that was answering questions. And I don't remember what the question that came from the audience
Mm.
was, but the answer from the person at the front was, whose filter are you living your life through? And
Whoa.
Josh, I heard nothing after that.
Hmm.
Nothing. Whose filter are you living your life through? And that one question set me on a spin for the next 3 days. I could think of nothing else. I thought, whose filter am I living my life through? It's not mine.
Mm.
And I realized who it was. And I started breaking down to say, okay, if that's not my filter, what do I stand for?
Yeah.
And I came up with 3 categories.
Mm.
I identified there are the stories I'm telling the world, okay,
Mm.
of who I presented myself to be,
Yeah.
of this image I had, of what I could say and what I could do and all of that. So, if you would meet me, you'd say, oh, Lisa, she does this and this is who she is, right? So, what I
Mhm.
wanted other people to believe.
Yeah.
Then I discovered the stories I told myself,
Mm.
which I'm not going to dare tell anyone what that is.
Mm.
The stories we tell ourselves is that voice that talks to us in our mind all day long, right? Like, who is that talking to? And
Yeah.
and yeah, it's usually not very nice. We would never I would never talk to you. I would never speak to a friend in
In
the
the way that you
way
speak
that
to
we
yourself.
speak to yourself, right?
Mm.
We would never do that. And then the third story I realized was that story in my heart, the story buried inside of my soul. So look at that. Stories we tell the world, stories we tell
Mm.
ourselves, the stories buried inside of our soul. Those were 3 different stories. No wonder we don't know who we are. And that set me on a journey to
Yeah.
discover out, okay, who am I? Who am I really? Who do I want to be? And how do I get there? So back to your original question, how I work with people is we start with those 3 stories and break
Mm.
them out very clearly and look at, what are they? Are any of them grounded in reality? And I have tools to help you find each of those. So that's where we start. And that's the identity piece.
That's fantastic. Do you mind if I ask, how old were you in that
Oh,
moment where you went through
oh.
that deep kind of questioning of who you really are?
I was early 60s. I might have been 60. Hmm.
I asked that. I just think that's so
Hmm.
inspiring, because
Yes,
I feel like
because
there's so many people that feel like, oh, I haven't figured this out yet and it's
Mhm.
too late for me or whatever it might be.
Mm-mm.
And that's just so powerful that you were, in your early 60s asking those questions
Mhm.
and then turning and helping other people ask those questions. I just think is so wild. Like how would how would 40-year-old Lisa look at present day Lisa? Like, do you think you would be surprised or shocked
Oh,
or like what that just to
oh
see
my
the work
gosh.
that you're doing? Like how do you think that the past you would respond?
Oh my gosh. Like, where did you find this courage to do this? And let me tell you,
I love that
yeah,
answer.
yeah, yeah. Where would you like? Who? Number one, not who do you think you are, but who in the heck are you? Like, there is, So let me say, when I was 40, at that point, I had 2 pretty young children because I didn't have my kids till I was in my 30s. I had
Mm,
2 pretty young children, and I was a corporate wife. I had my career. I had the house, the dogs, the vacations, the whatever, all those things that were about success.
yeah.
And I was the PTA person. I was that person that you would see in a sitcom or a movie, right? Like my life looked perfect, and was I happy? Yes, I was happy according to what the world told me I needed to be happy.
Mm,
And I was deliriously happy. But it was only a few years later that, I started feeling this sense of there was more
yeah.
out of life. There was
Mhm.
more to this. There was more for me.
Mhm.
And that's where it took me down a path where I was part of the beginning, this, being one of the founders of this school. But what I will tell you, Josh, is what also prompted me at this time is um, my father had passed probably about 10 years prior.
Hmm.
And I know no one that loved life more than my dad. Like, he went kicking and screaming, like, just absolutely kicking and screaming. Um,
And he passed
was
away
not
when you
going
were quite young then. Did
well,
he
did
there's
he yes, I'm trying to think. He passed away I was in my 50s when he passed
okay,
away,
yeah.
okay? And, I remember him saying, "I'm never gonna die." Well, you and I both know that's I don't know how that works out, but it didn't work out for him, right? But I loved my dad dearly, and I saw this man who loved life and just, oh my gosh, everything he touched was just he lived with an abundance mindset. But I ran across a book, called The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware.
Oh, that's a
She
powerful title. Wow.
Yes, she was a palliative care nurse for
Mm,
3 years, and so for people in their final stage of life, she would, kind of usher them through as they went through that, which,
mhm.
what a special person to be able to do that.
Seriously.
But what she did is she saw a trend of the top 5 regrets of these people at this
Mm,
stage. And because I was still so heartbroken about losing my dad here with me, I feel his presence every day. I know he's not
oh,
gone. But the top regret, Josh, was I didn't have the courage to live the life I want
mm.
instead of living the life someone else wanted me to live.
Oh, boy.
I didn't have the courage, and so I thought, "I am not going to be
Mm,
that is not going to be my top regret.
mhm.
I will not have a regret, and that certainly won't be the top one," right?
Right.
So, I just thought, at this point, who do I have to impress? I
Yeah.
have to honor me first.
Mhm.
And I started thinking, I'm here for a purpose. Here we get back to that purpose question.
Yeah.
I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. If I don't accomplish it, then what? How am I, not how am I going to look at myself, but really just if I didn't come here to do what I was supposed to do, then those gifts I've been given have been
Mm.
put to waste. So 40-year-old Lisa would say, how do you have the courage? And I would say most of us, up until we get to that point where we say, I'm just going for it, are so worried about what other people are going to think.
That's
But
true.
if you are one of those people, let me in on you something here. They don't care what you're doing. They're too worried about themselves.
They're worried about what everyone else is thinking of them.
Yes. Yeah, they really are. We think
Yeah.
everyone's watching our every move. You know what? They don't care. They're
Yeah.
too worried about themselves.
What do you what do you say to the person that is trying to find that sense of purpose? Like, they're listening to you
Mm,
talk and they're saying, "Oh, I think if I, were to die soon, I would have that regret that I didn't
mhm.
actually understand my purpose and live into it." Where do you start in
Yeah.
discovering that?
Yeah. And I do want to say, I've got a podcast called Your Passion, Purpose, and Personal Brand, and you hear so much about purpose today. The first thing I want to tell you is take the pressure off. It's
Mm,
not about purpose. And you don't have to go find your purpose
mm,
because your purpose you already have. And your
mm.
purpose is to live out the life of who you are. But if you don't know who that is, how can you do it?
Yeah.
So you don't have to chase purpose. It's already within you. There was something I follow. Oh, I don't even have my phone on here. I'm going to turn on my phone here because I want to read a text that came. I follow a gentleman, and I think he might have prior have been a monk or something like that. But a text came through today about purpose, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to keep this. So as
Oh,
this
that's so
phone is
good.
coming on, we're going to do this. But I just want,
Well, I think that's
and
an
I think,
interesting distinction because, purpose, I think people we can tie that up with a specific initiative or activity or job or accomplishment. And what you're saying is
Mhm,
no, you do need to take that step of understanding who you are
mhm.
and then just living into that.
Yeah,
And all the other activities will
absolutely.
flow out of that. Yeah.
It absolutely will. So here it is right here. Don't worry so much about finding a purpose. Just keep showing up with sincerity, curiosity, and presence. A purposeful life emerges from here. And the gentleman's name is Corey, Cory Muscara, Muscara. And I just think that is
That's
so
beautiful.
so
Yeah.
beautiful. So it's really not about going to find something. It's not a chore. It is
Mm.
understanding who you are and living that out.
Yeah.
And that's where happiness comes, because then you connect your presence to the value you bring to the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big, I'm going to cure cancer. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to
Mhm.
be a big thing like I'm going to help everybody find love that they love to do. It might just be something about, I am going to absorb every day. I'm going to live life. I'm going to enjoy the taste of my food. I'm going to enjoy the feeling when I exercise and my muscles are sore. Like,
Mm.
we get to be human
Yeah.
and live here and experience this. And you get one swing at it, folks.
Yeah. That's so true. What Yeah, I remember the quote where people talk about, I'm in hell, but I'm gonna stay here because I know all the street names. You can
Yeah.
you you can just get used to a certain existence stuck in a job that you don't like, maybe stuck
Mhm,
in an unhealthy relationship,
mhm,
toxic contexts of all kinds can
mhm,
abound. What do you say to the person that knows that they're just kind of stuck in that and they're
mhm,
existing and they don't want to leave because it's familiar?
mhm.
What are steps that they can
Yeah.
take? And I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, Instagram is full of examples of people. I mean, even in my life, it's kind of this crazy example of
Mhm.
someone that just like, let's blow the whole thing up,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily recommend that to others, but that's sort of out there as like, oh, here's this story of someone that did this drastic change. They quit the job, they left the marriage, they
Mhm,
moved countries, they whatever it might be,
mhm,
whatever's on that list. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but
mhm,
what do you say to the person that knows they're sort of stuck and they're not where they
mhm,
want to be? What are the baby steps that that they
mhm,
can
mhm.
take toward a greater self-knowledge and a more fulfilling life?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanna acknowledge that burning it all down is not for everybody.
Mm,
I did a version of that. I basically have taken what I did and I've evolved it into a whole new thing,
yeah,
going from a copywriter messaging strategist to now I help people reinvent themselves and working with culture. It's a little bit of a shift, but
right.
not quite as far as you did, Josh. I didn't go as all in as you did. But what I will say to people is, I was speaking with someone who was referred to me because
Mm,
she had expressed she wanted to make a change.
yeah,
And she came in and I told her a little bit about what that would look like as far as the process. And she paused and she very thoughtfully said, "That sounds hard. I think I might just sit on the couch and watch Netflix instead." Now, there is no judgment in that
mm.
at all,
I kind of
because
respect the honesty, honestly. It's
yes,
like
yes, yes. Because what that tells me is she was not uncomfortable enough to step out and do something a little bit different.
yeah,
I will tell you, a lot of people are afraid of what, when we say do the work,
mhm,
doing the work is not easy because you do have to look at yourself. And They did a study, and this was so amazing. They did a study, I believe, I can't get, I'm going to get this wrong, the details, but basically it was they were going to put you in a room and you could either sit there in silence for 15 minutes with yourself,
Mm.
or they had something where you could like shock yourself, right? Do you know the majority of people, like over 60% of people, and more men than women, preferred to shock themselves than to sit there with themselves in their thoughts?
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So we are so used to filling our lives with scrolling on Instagram,
Mhm.
having the television on, streaming television, music, whatever it is, self soothing, using chemicals to soothe ourselves,
Yeah.
that we are very uncomfortable with ourselves and with ourselves. And the reason why is we might have to face some type of reality of who we are. So where I'm going with all of this, the first question to ask and the first thing to do is what happened to a lot of people during COVID, right? We weren't commuting anymore. We had time to pause and
Mm.
really look at your life. So I think a great activity would be to take a couple of hours, go to a totally different environment where you're not accessible to your house, where you can pick up a book or anything, do the laundry, any of those
Sweep the
things, nothing
floor.
else.
Yeah, to some
Yeah.
distraction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go out in nature, go sit under a tree, take a journal. And I'm not going to recommend that you journal because a lot of people that's not comfortable for. But just take your life and divide it into perhaps decades,
Mm.
or even if you take it and divide it into fifths, right? So
Mm.
the first fifth of your life, what is the one thing that you remember about that? The second
Mm.
fifth of your life, how would you characterize that? So start looking backwards and measuring backwards to see who you were.
Mm.
Look at who you are now, and then imagine how long do you want to live? Pick that number, where you think
Mm.
realistically you're going to be, and look
Mm.
at that gap that's left and imagine who is that person at the end of your life and how do you get there? And it might not be so coming up with a plan, but I even
Mm.
challenge people of who do you want to be in 3 years?
Wow.
If you could be anyone, who do you want to be in 3 years? And what do you need to do today to start living in that role?
Mm.
And that will set you going.
Yeah, I think I'd rather shock myself or watch Netflix instead of having to do that. I mean, I think it's such a powerful and simple exercise. I love that you recommend that.
Mhm.
And it's also so understandable why so many of us avoid that work because
Yes. Mhm.
there is something painful that you will have
Mhm.
to remember, some kind of unfulfilled dream that you
Yeah,
or or even just thinking about how much time you have left is like a painful thing for many
right,
people.
right.
But I love that you recommend that reflection, and
Mhm.
even though it's so simple, like that 2 hours could be life-changing. And that's a phrase we maybe
Mhm.
overuse, but really could be
Mhm.
life-changing to suddenly say, "Huh, you know
Mhm.
what? I'm not as aligned with who I really am."
Yeah.
And, even just small changes that come out of that reflection can
Mhm.
redirect your whole life.
Yes, but one thing I do wanna bring up about this is however you feel about what happened in the past, is you would not be who you are today had you not gone through those things.
It's true.
Like, those are the things that brought you to today. So, take a look at that, thank those experiences,
Mm,
and say goodbye because you're not gonna be that person anymore. You are
mm,
heading to this person you're gonna be in 3 years.
Yeah.
And that for me was one of the hardest things, Josh. What I did, one of the first things I did, and a lot of people will do, is I went to my closet and I pulled open the doors and I picked up an outfit and said, "Is this what the future Lisa will wear?" No, in the pile. And I cleaned through my closet because,
Mm.
and it's kind of hard because you pick up something, you're like, "Oh, this is where I wore this to the dinner where this happened," right?
There's like emotional meaning to
Memories.
things,
Yeah.
memories. Yeah.
So what you do is you take a photo of it
Mm.
because most of the time I couldn't fit in that clothing anyway anymore, right?
Just
I went
Photoshop your face onto those old outfits.
Photoshop. Yeah. But I think just starting to do that, and as I started cleaning my house out, as my children had left the home,
Yeah.
it was kind of like a Marie Kondo moment,
Well,
where,
that's what I was just thinking of.
does it bring me
Yeah.
joy? Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so good.
yeah. And the filter that I
Mm.
had to put things through was I had one large box that was open, and I said, "You can keep enough to fill this box, and then you're not keeping anymore." So I would hold
Wow.
something up. Do I need this moving forward?
Mm.
No, I don't. Oh, but I spent a lot of money on it, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people are like, "I spent so much money on that, I don't wanna get that." Well, guess what? The shopping experience for it was entertainment. The excitement when you got home was gratifying. The having it and looking at it made you feel better. Do not discount the value you got by going through all of that.
Wow. And that
And
applies to more than
yeah.
clothes, obviously, right? Like
Oh, everything.
that can be
Yeah.
whole eras of your life, or you went to a school to study one thing and now you're not doing it, and to even
Mhm.
change your plans feels like this big
Yeah.
loss, but you can do that same exercise with an experience, right?
Mhm. I absolutely, because, thinking about, like, I love planning a vacation almost better than I do going on it. I love the planning part. But yes, all of that, there is excitement, there's joy, that's the experience of living and being a human.
Yeah.
So, it's not about having things. It's
Yeah.
about the feeling that we experience as we go through that process. So, that is really the second phase after evaluate where you are, pick a point on the map of who that person's going to be,
Yeah.
and then that person's going to be different, right? It's
Mhm.
going to be different. And so then looking at, okay, what do I no longer need to take with me?
Yeah.
Thanking it with
Right.
loving kindness. You got me here,
Mhm.
even if it was hard, and then moving on. So
I'm just
it
curious,
is,
what some
yeah,
other categories of things would be in that evaluation process, because, I mean, I
yeah.
love the closet example, and you're saying, "You know what? I don't this is not who I wanna be in the future, this clothing, this
Mhm.
outfit." But what are some
Yeah.
other things that would be in it? Like, I'm thinking of relationships even sometimes, not that we
Oh,
should just,
no,
like,
absolutely.
cast people off, but
Right.
sometimes that can be
Mhm,
an area where it's like, "You
mhm,
know what? If I keep investing in this circle of people or
mhm,
this relationship, it doesn't represent where I
mhm.
want to go and who I really want to be." So I'm just curious
Yes.
if there are other categories you think of in that
Yeah.
kind of
So
evaluation.
let's look at people. So I was looking at my professional groups that I was in and
Mm,
looking at the future person I wanted to be. I found people who were ahead of me. I
yeah,
found a group to join. And guess what? Now, instead of being one of those at the tail end chasing everyone else, I'm now one of the leaders in that because I have evolved into that
that's
person.
cool. Yeah,
And what have I done with that other group I was in? They're still in my life. They still have value,
yeah,
but I just interact in a different way, or maybe on a different frequency, or maybe there's some
yeah.
people that we've grown apart, but we have seasons for everything. So,
Mhm, mhm.
that would be with relationships.
That's good.
Um, yeah, and so, I mean, it could be anything possession-wise, like, I'm thinking about the tools in our garage,
Yeah,
like, how many to I mean, it could be anything. It could be
yeah,
experiences. It could be things you physically, like, when you get to the point where I am anymore, I'm not gonna be someone that spends a lot of time in maybe a physical activity I did when I was 40.
a hobby or something that you've
Yeah,
got,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the equipment for. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And that kind of honesty, like I I'm always fascinated by, I mean, Marie Kondo, that's her whole message, but how the
Yeah.
physical world around us,
Mm.
and physical can be schedule, physical can be a home, physical can be our
Mhm.
possessions, how it does represent something internal, or internal
Mhm.
baggage in a sense is reflected in the physical
Yeah.
world. And so that process of dreaming and envisioning and looking
Mhm.
out, then saying, okay, in light of this vision 3 years from now, or whatever it might be, I'm actually going to make physical changes that
Mhm.
reflect that pathway. I
Yes.
don't need, you know, I don't need this stuff, or maybe it's even the
Mhm.
house. I don't need this house anymore, or
Right.
whatever it might
Right.
be. And that can be really painful if you haven't started with the vision side of it and the
Yes.
reflection side of it.
Yes, because it has to be, I found, what are you running to
Mhm.
versus what are you running from?
Wow. Yeah, it's such a different motivation.
Mhm.
And
It's
you know,
very different.
it's what's what this is making me think of is like how this applies on a business front. And I'm sure you, when
Mhm.
you're coaching individuals that lead businesses, you get into this. But it's just making me think about how, like, you can have a certain part of your business, or maybe it's an
Mhm.
employee or whatever it might be, that represents an era that you
Mhm.
can be really grateful for. And then
Yes.
it's really hard to move on from that. Maybe even like because of, if you stop doing that, you won't make as much money, or you'll have to change in
Mhm.
some way. But sometimes a part of a business really moving on to the next level, or being aligned with purpose, as you talk about, can involve that letting go of parts of it.
Mhm.
Like I've seen this with friends who have run agencies, and they get to
Mhm.
this point where they're like, I always thought I wanted to have a huge agency and a huge team and all those kinds of things. And then they go through this process of, this isn't actually
Mhm.
making me happy.
Right,
And to
right.
get to the life that they actually want,
Mhm.
they have to downgrade their ego, number one,
Mhm.
but downgrade their services, downgrade the size of their
Mhm.
team, like decrease in many ways,
Mhm.
give up the office that makes them look like so fancy and
Right.
professional, whatever it might be. But isn't it interesting how, like, that letting go process then frees
Mhm.
you? It's like now you're free to be,
Yes.
be the business you actually want to be.
Exactly. Yeah, you have that margin.
What are you looking forward to when it comes to your own work or
Mhm.
projects, or just, how your business is growing? What are you excited about in the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, great question. I am in the process of writing a book. I have,
Fantastic.
yeah, I have it outlined. Um, and now it's just the act of, okay, now I actually have to do it, right? And the reason why is I have created this framework that I follow. I help people through it. But if I want to impact as many people as I want, Josh,
Mm,
realistically, that's not going to happen if I don't put it into something that can communicate the message further. So, I've got a podcast. I'm on podcast. I've got my website. I've got my work. I've got my
yeah,
my content. But I want something where someone can go and be inspired. Where at age 60, I basically said, "Okay, I'm done with that. I'm ready to start this new chapter and I am going to go all in and go for it."
mm,
Because I don't have to choose to go off into the sunset and sit in a rocking chair and like like talk
yeah.
about go sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. Like that to me would be just so painful. There is so much of me that I still want to give. There's
That's
so
so
much
good.
love I have to give people. There's so much acceptance. I want people to know they are just walking miracles
Mm,
that have a chance to impact others. And if we aren't loving each other, if we spend all of our time in fear, all that love capacity that we have is going to waste. So that's what I'm excited about is this book.
I love it. I can't wait to see it on shelves.
I can't
Lisa,
either.
thank you so much for this incredible conversation, and I hope people will follow you on social media, listen to your podcasts, and I'm sure many will say, you know what, I need to work with someone like Lisa. I need this help. So I hope that they'll reach out and engage with you. You're just such a gift. Thanks for the energy and the insight that you put into the world.
Well, thanks so much, Josh. I feel the same about you, and I just really appreciate having the chance to speak.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.